I'm Derek Young. You're listening to the KSO show once again, and we'll continue our position preview leading up to fall camp. We've touched on a little bit with the safeties and the offensive line thus far. It's time to really dive into the quarterback position, the most important position on the field. I'm joined by Grant Flanders and Flando. Not a whole lot of mystery with this position. Skylar Thompson is the guy, and it seems as if he's recovered fully and is ready for a full slate of games in 2021.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about who your number one guy is for this season, and I think we've known that pretty much all offseason. Skylar Thompson is ready to come in as a sixth-year senior and, try to build off of what he did before he was taken out of last year, which was, solid performance against Oklahoma, beating them, and then going down when Rico Jeffers took him out against Texas Tech on a slightly dirty hit. So, yeah, I think since then he's been working his way back into things, after he got cleared to go. Nothing but, I think, good things we've heard from coaches and everything else about how things have looked. And even Colin Klein has said, this might be the best Skylar Thompson he has seen yet.
Yeah, that's a great sign because he's obviously been a pretty decent player throughout his career. Maybe not – he probably hasn't set the world on fire. He's probably the most polarizing player on the team that typically happens at the quarterback position, but especially with Skylar, as a lot of people will rush to either side of the coin where, either they believe he's not good enough or some thinks he's an all-conference caliber player. I probably fall somewhere in the middle, but there's no doubt that he's a polarizing figure, but there's no doubt that they're a better team with him under center as well. When he left last year, obviously things kind of fell apart for the Wildcats. Still somewhat efficient offense. They probably didn't reach the end zone enough to capitalize on the opportunities that they did have, but you'd rather have them than not. But if they don't, Will Howard's the guy. He was the guy in 2020 when Skylar went down, and by all accounts, a pretty strong off season for the second-year quarterback out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I don't think there's been anyone else that's been talked up more than the backup quarterback in Will Howard and how he's progressed. I don't know if anyone out of all the young guys has progressed more than what Will Howard has done. I mean, obviously, a little more than a half a season last year that he got of starts is going to help him in his experience, but now he's been able to add weight. He's been able to get better on the field, and I think on all accounts it seems like he has taken his game to the next level, both physically and mentally. I think if he were to be put in a position where he needed to come in, whether that is Skylar goes down with injury or whatever, for whatever reason, I think Will Howard will be very much more well-prepared this season than he was a year ago.
Yeah, almost an unfair position that he was put in a year ago. Obviously they didn't really have another choice. They thought he was the best option. It was likely between him and Nick Haas with Jaron Lewis as the fourth stringer a year ago. So they went with Will Howard, but I mean, he as a true freshman that wasn't ready for prime time just yet. Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made, probably a pretty fair one, that Will Howard was put in quite the unfair position a year ago. Not only was he a true freshman quarterback playing under center for the Wildcats, but he was doing so without any semblance of an off season.
Yep.
He didn't get any spring ball, even though he was an early enrollee, just because the pandemic wiped out a lot of those opportunities, all of those opportunities, quite frankly, early on in the off season. They did return at some point in the summer, but then they had to shut it down again. So it was an interrupted period of development for him, still thinking that Skylar Thompson would be the guy at that point going to fall camp. There's some disruption there again. So he's, he doesn't have any off-season development, being a true freshman quarterback that probably needed it the most just because he wasn't ready to begin with. And then once you get into the season, you're not developing in the season. That's more about game prep week to week. So he did all that without, any development, just wasn't ready. And so it's probably a pretty unfair gauge on how to evaluate him, but we've heard nothing but good things since. And I guess, lastly, I would say the debate here, or the questions that need to be answered here, is just how many snaps, if any, does Will Howard get this season?
Yeah, that's going to be the question, and I think Kleiman already stated in his first press conference in the fall that there could be a possibility that Will Howard could redshirt if it came down to it. But I still think they might try a two-quarterback system to see how it works early on, and maybe some games just to play with it and see how it works, because they know that Will Howard is better and more well-equipped, and they wouldn't mind giving him, more experience when he has more tools at his disposal compared to what it was like last season. So I do think we do see snaps from Will Howard this season. How much that is, I don't know. They might try to keep him under 4 games just to keep his red shirt. That'll be something very interesting to hold on to, but you got to hope Skylar Thompson stays healthy, or else for sure Will Howard will be pushed in there, but at least he's more well-equipped this time around.
Yep, Thompson stays healthy. I'm starting to believe, just because they pumped the brakes just a little bit during fall camp on a possible 2-quarterback system. Now, I think there is probably some situational duties where Will Howard probably makes a lot of sense for Kansas State under center, maybe in some kind of package that they've composed just for him. But you have to think, if Skylar Thompson stays healthy, then there is a chance that he may redshirt, because we talk about garbage time, mop-up duties, whatever it may be, whatever you want to call it. I just don't know if we're going to have a bunch of them. You typically don't have more than 4 of those games in a year anyway. So, yeah, there is potential here for Will Howard to redshirt, something that he didn't get to do last year, but kind of did, because it obviously was a year that doesn't count against your eligibility clock anyway. So it'll be funny to think about it that way. Will Howard typically got like the COVID shirt last year, could get the red shirt this year, so he could walk into the 2022 season as a starter with still 4 years of eligibility.
Before we wrap up, I got one question for you. Let's say, God forbid, Thompson and Howard both go down. Who's the next guy up in your opinion? That's a tough one.
It's probably, I would say, I don't know if it's tough. I think it's probably Jaron Lewis at that point.
Yeah.
I think it's quite slam dunk. And just like Will Howard was a year ago, I think Jake Rubley's pretty far off. I don't think that he's jumping anyone that was already at Kansas State. Next time, when you hear us talking on the KSO show, position-wise, we'll probably dive into the linebackers, which is a unit that has a lot of questioning in it. So that'll be an intriguing show. Hope you tune in. For Grant Flanders, I'm Derek Young. You've been listening to the KSO show, and tell your friends.